CrossFit Media and CBS are a little hamstrung with the reality of where our world is right now in terms of traveling and trying to pick up media beforehand. But I do really see the storytelling aspect of this games being unprecedented compared to other years. And your question of should we be leaning more towards this more exclusive field because of that reason going forward, I believe that there probably should be a secondary qualifier.
We are here because we know the outcomes in our lives are within our control. That taking absolute ownership of how we eat, sleep, train, think, and connect with each other is how we'll optimize our health and happiness. That chasing excellence is how we grab hold of what is possible. Our mission is to live on the run, always chasing, never stopping. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. How are you, Ben?
I am good, Patrick. Thank you.
We are talking less than a week out, right? Less than a week out from stage one of the CrossFit Games, 2020 CrossFit Games?
CrossFit Games stage one ended Saturday afternoon, and we are speaking here today on Thursday afternoon.
Got it. So less than a week. And so I thought we'd take that opportunity to talk about the games, to talk about the world of the games a little bit inside of our 3x3. So our 3x3 is when I kind of come up with 3 different ideas and you give us your 3 hot takes on those 3 ideas. And so we're going to do that, but we're just going to kind of keep it specific to CrossFit Games training, comp train, that end of things. Cool?
Cool. Yeah,
so the first thing,
very timely.
Yeah. So the first question is 3 lessons from stage 1 of the 2020 CrossFit Games. What did you guys learn?
Okay. So the first, what did we learn? Anybody that watched it, or certainly people that participated, one of the biggest things that was highlighted during this stage. So first, maybe a little background for people that didn't see this and don't know what we're talking about. Sure. The CrossFit Games this year, we are in a worldwide pandemic. So the competition, which normally was scheduled for middle of the summer in Madison, Wisconsin, the top few hundred athletes around the world, to include national champions, go there to compete for world's fittest athlete. That wasn't in the cards this year for obvious reasons. So they created an secondary online qualifier where they took the top 30 men and 30 women. They were invited to compete on an online competition in their home gyms, where CrossFit sent judges out to each one to make sure that everybody's doing the same amount of work and everything was valid. That's what happened last weekend. It was a 2-day competition, 7 events. And then the top 5 athletes from each of those are now moving on to, it's scheduled right now for middle of October in California. We had a handful of athletes competing. We had, I think it was 6 or 7 of the 30, which is pretty darn cool. And we're having 3 of the 10. 3 of the 10 for comp train. Yes, my comp train athletes. 3 of the top 10 are comp train athletes. Sam Quant, Brooke Wells, and Katrin Davidsdottir. Katrin and Cole did it here at CrossFit New England. We put on a pretty good little production for them. And then we sent coaches to a few of our other athletes to kind of help them through the weekend. Mm-hmm. Lots of things came to light during it. The biggest challenges of the aspect was you don't know how you did. So you pour your heart in this workout, you sell your soul, you let the battery acid pump through your veins, and you give every single thing that you possibly have. And then you essentially have to wait, depending on the time zone you're in, anywhere from like 12 to a couple hours to figure out actually how well you did. And there was 2 releases each day updating the leaderboard. Yep. What was the first thing that, if you watched it, it was how close the race was. So Jeff Adler, the first workout was called Friendly Fran. And Jeff Adler is one of the athletes that's moving on to the games. At the end of Friendly Fran, he does his last chest to bar pull-up and crumbles to the ground. The people around him scream at him to yell. He's down there for a second, 2, maybe 3. The people that are screaming at him, "You haven't finished. Get over the finish line." So he had to run across a finish line.
Yeah.
Had Jeff Adler stayed on the ground for 1 second longer, he would not be going to the CrossFit Games. Chandler Smith would be going to the CrossFit Games. That's how close this whole thing was. And that shook out in a bunch of different ways. I don't have the numbers in front of me, the leaderboard, but I believe 6 male athletes were within a second on the row. That's 1 second equal to 30 points on the leaderboard. And the leaderboard came down to singular points. 30 points was massive at the end of the day. So 1 second on the rower was a difference of 30 points. That has to be the biggest takeaway, that every second matters. Yeah. It's actually the name of the first CrossFit documentary that was put out about the games. But it truly is, or theirs is every second counts, I think. Yep. That's the biggest lesson. The takeaway out of this thing is the field is so tight, particularly when the majority of the workouts were under 3.5 minutes. If you let up a second somewhere, you could potentially not be going to the games. So that's the first biggest lesson for sure. Second lesson that comes at it is kind of the same thing, but the way these workouts were structured, they kind of took some normal benchmark workouts, most notably the Fran and Diane workouts. But the biggest difference between those was that Fran and Diane traditionally have descending rep schemes of 21, 15, 9. That is purposely programmed to allow for, it's programmed with quote unquote, the term is elegance, to maximize intensity. You can actually get the best score with that rep scheme because 21 is a lot, but you're fresh. 15 is middle, but it's not that much. At the end, you only have 9 left. So you can keep the intensity up from round to round to round. They scrapped that model. They kept the Fran model, but they scrapped that and kept it as 3 rounds of 21s for Fran and 3 rounds of 15s for Diane. Because of that, pacing played a huge role in this. So when you start to break down some of the split times, the best guys in the world did it the best, where they only lost 10, 15, 20 seconds from the first round to the last round. The common thing that we saw for most finishers were finishing the first round between 1 minute and 1:06. The last round was taking upwards of 2.5 minutes. Now that is, if that might not jump off the page to most people like it does me as a coach, but when you think about that in perspective, what that means is imagine you're doing a 2-mile run and your first run takes 7 minutes and your second mile takes even longer than that, takes 16 minutes. What that would look like with somebody running around the track is insanity. It would look like somebody would stop halfway and have a sandwich, but it's only because people mispaced it. So the first lesson here to me is every second counts. The next one is the importance of pacing ... in certain workouts. So certain ones it doesn't matter as much, like the row. We had Cole and Katrin go out with 2 completely different strategies in the row. Cole did it exactly as we'd want to in terms of the right strategic approach to pacing. Katrin, for where she was in the weekend, I basically was like, screw strategy, give everything you had, go out guns a-blazing, just explode. And they both end up at their exact projected times. So some workouts, it doesn't matter as much as others. And what Fran and Diane highlighted incredibly was how important that was. A lot of other people that didn't do it well with the Nancy workout also saw that huge deviation from fastest round to slowest round. So second lesson, I guess, was pacing. Third one, it's not so much what I bring to the athletes or how to improve performance, but it's just it's a lesson that you can take away as a coach or a programmer or even as an athlete in your garage. Is simple is effective. Like these workouts were incredibly effective tests, and they were so simple. Like 21 thrusters, 21 pull-ups, 3 rounds. Like how simple is that? It doesn't get 1 rep max front squat. Like you don't need to create these crazy elaborate tests to make it really effective. I'm not saying this was the very best programming. I don't think it was bad programming at all. I think it's pretty darn solid. But what I'm saying is how effective the program, how simple it can be and effective it can be. 1K, like there was nothing spiced up about it.
Yeah.
And I just love the purity of it and how the word that keeps popping up is I'm just maybe because I'm a purist as a coach and at heart, but 3 rounds of 21 thrusters and pull-ups, just like, yeah, love it. Couple it. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to do a D-ball carry in the middle. You don't have to do any sort of like craziness at all. Just like keep it super simple. So that'd be my 3 things. Every second counts, pacing matters, and then simple equals effective.
Of those. Just because we're talking about it, what does now to the games look like in terms of time, in terms of like, is there enough time to make real improvements? Are we like, where do you focus? Is it weeks? Like literally, I actually don't even know the date off the top of my head. Are we talking about weeks or are we talking about months? It's
a month difference. But in terms of training, it's 3 weeks because you lose the 3 days after this event to kind of recuperate. And you lose the 3 days before the next event for taper. So you have 3 training weeks. So that would be the actual games. The on-site games is in October 20th ish, right around October, right around there. And then between now and then, what does that look like? It's Rocky Goes to Russia. You try and make as many gains as you can in 3 weeks. Yep. In terms of the programming, you try and figure out, there's a few considerations to come into play. I don't think I'm giving away the farm by saying this, but essentially what you do is you figure out what are the biggest, where can we make the greatest adaptations? And you equally weight that with the likelihood of the test. So we could get Katrin really good at juggling in 3 weeks. She could become amazing at juggling in 3 weeks, like really, really good. A lot of adaptation could happen. I don't think juggling is coming up. So it doesn't make a ton of sense for us to do that. There's a really good chance a max squat might show up. We're not going to be able to make tons of changes in her max squat in 3 weeks. Yeah. So you have to try to figure out the balance between those things. What is it that's really likely to show up, and what do we get the most bang for our effort from? And that's what you lean into the most. The other small consideration, which is unique to this year, is you kind of take the athletes that are there and kind of weigh and measure what should we kind of putting our effort into. So let's say the games was going to be Katrin against Tia, Amanda Barnhart, Cara Webb, Cara Saunders, and another just freakishly strong, Danny Spiegel or someone like that. No matter what we do with Katrin's front squat, she's still going to take last. Yeah. So you kind of like you kind of weigh that into the consideration as well, because all of those athletes already have 60 pounds on her not 60, but a massive amount on her squat. So you kind of figure out that a little bit. I'm not saying it comes into the it's a factor that we consider. It's not the number one, but it is a thing that we think about.
Yeah. I don't want to turn this episode entirely about the games, but it's fun. Have you got, I mean, I'm sure you have, but how have you started to think about that it's 1 versus 4, right? That format is different. Is there anything you can do strategically, either in preparation or, the weekend of the event, that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do at a normal, regular CrossFit Games where there's 50, 60 athletes, at least at the start? Or does that not actually matter?
I think that it opens up a lot for Dave. I think there's a lot more possibilities that Dave can do. First off, like the timeline constriction is gone. Like you can do whatever you want. You're always only doing 1 heat. Always. Like you can do whatever you want from a programming perspective. In terms of the nuancy type stuff, like could you do like more like round robin type format, like head to head type things, like tug of war? Like you could probably do things like that now. I don't think it makes sense to program leading up to it for those specific possible scenarios. but there are things that like he could certainly do some head-to-head aspect things, which would be super fun. Like let's do a little, like everyone does 5. Like you're going to go head-to-head in a tug of war against Tia, then you're going to do it against Haley, then you're going to do it against Carrie, and so on. And it's like that might be cool. Like Agreed. So there's the new things that could not be done before that are now available.
Okay, moving on. The second of our 3x3, 3 benchmarks for competitive CrossFitters.
Okay, so let's put some disclaimers to these. So benchmarks are either named, hero, or otherwise repeated named workouts inside of CrossFit. Yep. So they're the girls, they're the heroes, and they're the named workouts. So like Fight Gone Bad is not a girl, and Fight Gone Bad is not a hero, yet it's a known workout. Tabata This is not one of those, but it is one. King Kong, like even that's one of those probably ones. So, and then for competitive athletes, so I'm going to put that in terms of like people trying to qualify for sanctionals. Yep. So that's kind of the place I would put this kind of like, so maybe not even the open athletes, because open athletes inside the gym, like running goes out the door. But I'm going to say for people, just to put like some disclaimers and some parameters around the choices, because it helps when you classify them. And then the third thing I'll kind of lay out for this discussion is I'm going to say that these are 3 benchmarks together. So not like this is the one best, and if you didn't have this one, this would be the second best. If you didn't have this one, this would be the third best. What I'm saying is 3 benchmarks. You only have 3 tests to determine whether somebody should be going to the CrossFit Games or not. Man, even as I'm saying this, I'm like, I don't even know if my choice is the right choices. Yeah, I'm already second guessing my stuff because what I just said. When I first put these together, I was not saying to go to the CrossFit Games. I was just saying to kind of like to assess athletic ability. But I'm realizing there's a hole already as I'm talking through it. All right, having said that, moving on. The first one would be Amanda or Amanda 45. So Amanda is 975 of squat cleans and ring muscle ups. Amanda 45 is the same thing, but the rep scheme starts with 13. So it goes 13, 11, 975. Amanda has shown up at the CrossFit Games. Amanda 45 has shown up at the CrossFit Games. I believe that those 2 movements really exemplify kind of the higher level capacities of a CrossFit athlete. If you look at the athletes that do really well in Amanda or Amanda 45, they're the cream of the crop. Yeah. They're kind of like, you kind of got the mojo. You got the skills, you got the strength, you got the stamina, you got the wind, you got the athleticism inside of our sport. It kind of rounds that out really well. The loading is heavy enough, but it's not so heavy that's just a strength thing. The gymnastic test is enough, but it's not just of gymnastic stuff. Those 2 things combined together, pretty darn good test. I think if you coupled that with the workout we just saw, Damn Diane, which was 3 rounds of 15 deadlifts at 315. Again, heavy enough, but not a test just of strength, coupled with this really kind of higher scale upper body pushing movement this time of deficit handstand push-ups. Something along those lines, I think really would paint a picture. Those 2 things combined, or you're doing a pretty darn good job. The third one, to round that out, I would take the barbell away. I'd bring running in, and I would do it a weight vest Murph. And if you have, because you need something long. Basically, what we've done is we've gone 3, 4, 5 minutes with Amanda, 3, 4, 5 minutes with Diane, and then you need something on the opposite spectrum, which is 35 minutes of weight vest Murph, and you can partition it. I actually think that's even a better test. 5 rounds of 20, 30, 40 inside of the bookends of the miles. Yep. As the hesitation I had to start this off is I've realized you realize really quickly, like there's no squatting strength in there. You're just doing squatting stamina with Murph. There's 300 air squats in a vest. It's not a perfect 3 benchmarks, but I think it's a good starting place for competitive athletes. Now, to give some benchmarks for people, if you were to do, let's just do regular Amanda. We're just going to do regular Amanda. If you can do regular Amanda in under 4 minutes, you're probably a games caliber athlete. If you can do Damn Diane in under 4 minutes, you're probably a games caliber athlete. And if you can do Murph, weight vest Murph, in under, it's probably like 35-ish minutes, you're probably super high caliber. Now, the best in the world will do that closer to the 30-minute mark. But again, it depends on how hot it is, depends on your run course, and all those other things. Running is a kind of a hard benchmark to work with people when they're not at an actual event, because the running courses vary so much. If your pull-up bar is right at the exact mile mark, you could end up shaving. This is really versus if your pull-up bar is at the end of the building and where you do your turnarounds. It's when I give running workouts to my athletes, I don't even compare them, because little tiny differences in run routes go a long, long way. So that would be my 3. If I was to add in a strength thing, it would be a 1 rep max clean and jerk as an additional kind of like cherry on the top.
Got it. All right. Our third of our 3x3 today is 3 trends that you're anticipating inside of competitive CrossFit. So looking out year, 2, 3 years, I assume you do that. What do you see, and what are you kind of trying to start to anticipate and work towards?
I see a lot more interest in the sport. I think what Eric Rosa, as the new CEO of CrossFit, and his interest in the sport, his belief that these are the pinnacle, these should be the poster boys and girls that we are all chasing. They are the aspirational aspect of the everyday athlete. He is an athlete himself. I think he's going to invest heavily into the sport side of CrossFit. And because of that, it's going to draw a ton more coverage from media networks, from big sponsors. And I think that there's going to be a lot more eyeballs on the sport. He said he wants 1 billion people watching the sport, which is just incredible. I don't know if he means across the entire year, or if it's literally the games themselves get 1 million eyeballs. I'm sorry, 1 billion with a B.
Yeah.
Billion. But I think that there's going to be, CBS, who was not a part of this for the last couple of years, is now airing this live on their network across all of their networks. That's just it's a big pickup for year 1. I think that there's going to be a lot more coverage and interest in the games going forward. This is a weird year with only 10 athletes going. I'm really curious to see what happens, because if this year has any, CBS is doing this year, if this year has any interest, I think it's going to be just a huge catapult for the sport.
Yeah. Do you think that the format of the games this year being 5-on-5, that does lend itself to a media enterprise better than certainly 60 athletes, 4 heats, for even just the casual viewer of the sport? That's a lot to engage with. Do you think that they might come away from this experience thinking, how do we get closer to this much smaller, much more watchable version than the expansion that we've seen in the last year or 2?
It's a really good question. And I totally agree with you that the storytelling that can come out of 5 athletes is just so much stronger. It's going to be more like, I hope actually it's more like when you watch the Olympics, right? You watch the Olympics and there's all this background story, and what they're doing is really smart. They're like getting you to invest in the athletes. They're turning these people in, they're turning you into a fan. They're turning them into a role model. They're turning, I hope and I believe that that's probably what's going to happen. I think that CrossFit Media and CBS are a little hamstrung with the reality of where our world is right now in terms of traveling and trying to pick up media beforehand. But I do really see the storytelling aspect of this games being unprecedented compared to other years. And your question of should we be leaning more towards this more exclusive field because of that reason going forward, I believe that there probably should be a secondary qualifier maybe it ends up being the weekend before the games where they invite all the national champions, much like they do at the Olympics.
Yep.
At the Olympics, there is, and people don't even realize this, for the 100-meter dash, there's not just the finals.
No.
That's a week-long event. And they run qualification after qualification after qualification. But those don't get the airtime.
Yeah.
I think that potentially what would work well here is pull the athletes out there a week or 10 days beforehand, put them through a 1, 2, or 3 day events. We can figure out how many events those are, and then whittle the field down to the top single heat, whatever that single heat is, whether that's 5, 10, or 20. And then you really get to open up the floor to really exciting stuff. And they tried to do that a little bit last year with the cuts. But what they did was won a single event, cut the field in half. Yeah. Another single event, cut the field in half again. Another third cut the field. That to me is not the right qualification process. Mm-hmm. Do a little mini, invite 150 athletes out, whatever it is. Do a mini games, whatever that looks like. Everyone does 3 events, and then cut the field down to, 50. Yeah. And let those 50 athletes go through another 3 events. And now you have your X, 5, 10, 20, whatever that is. Yeah.
And I think the two of the things that you said are really connected. The first being, Eric's proposed number of people watching the games, which is obviously more people than that are probably doing CrossFit. And the only way to get that, the only way to get people to watch a sport that they don't engage in is if the storytelling is good.
Right.
Right. And so both of those things, if that's the goal, then storytelling has to be the method by which you get to that goal. Because otherwise, people aren't going to watch somebody do 100 thrusters.
I love that. I think that's, it might not be the only way, but it's certainly a really powerful way. I think that another thing that could be done is to make the sport visually more compelling.
Yeah.
So if I come in to watch even something as exciting as the chaos workout from the games a couple years ago, and I come in the middle of it, and I see 20 athletes doing burpee pull-ups to a target. They're all doing 20 burpee pull-ups to a target, and they're doing it for 45 seconds, a minute 15, a minute 20. And I'm like, what am I watching?
Right.
And they zero in on 2 athletes and they pan back out, and I have no idea who's in first.
Yep.
I'm just watching 20 athletes doing burpee pull-ups. There might be the type of thing where these qualification processes are things like that. We have them do Friendly Fran. We have them do the Diane. We have them do these really where you don't need to make it visually appealing.
Yeah.
But then when you get to these final 5, now you make it just like truly made for TV.
Yeah.
Which is, the made for TV is like Ninja Warrior. Yeah. Like you don't need to know anything. I don't need to know a single rule. I don't need to know anything about anybody. I could flip on Ninja Warrior, and my 8-year-old is like, oh yeah, wait, let's watch this. Let's watch this.
Yep.
Because you just get it. Even something like The Rock's Titan Games.
I was just gonna bring that up.
Like you don't need to know anything about the rules. You don't need to know anything about the sport, yet it's a test of physical prowess.
Yep.
And right away, you just kind of like, you get it. And if it was whittled down to 5, 6, or 10, maybe there's the opportunity for that type of thing. And I believe that's important. Mm-hmm. I believe that's really, really important. Mm-hmm. I still want to find the fittest, and I think you can continue to find the fittest that way with the other types of tests coming in earlier.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think that the Titan Games are a really good lesson in what could be. Not certainly that. We're not
for TV.
Yeah, not manufactured entertainment. Because I think that in order for it to be honest and authentic, there still has to be the heart of what CrossFit is, the heart of what happens in the affiliates. But I think that there's a huge lesson there in what, if you want the goal of millions and millions of people viewing it, you've got to meet them where they are to some degree. And where they are is this going to entertain me? Am I going to have fun watching this? Am I going to get to know somebody? Am I going to be inspired? And I think that so far that's been hard at the CrossFit Games. It's great for people who love CrossFit. We can get all those things, but if you're trying to get outside of our bubble, then you've got to meet them where they are, and where they are is do I get it, and is it fun for me to watch?
Go back and watch from 2 years ago, the 30 muscle ups for time workout. Oh, on TV.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Like it's a camera just panning across people.
Yep.
It's just doing this.
Yep.
So you don't even get to see like the field. You don't even get to see like if you're there as a fan to watch somebody, you don't even get to see that person.
Don't get that. Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, unless you understand the scoreboard thing at the top, which is like, you have to know the sport to get, you can't walk in and see that.
Yeah.
So I think that there's room.
Agreed. Okay.
And this is coming from, I think the CrossFit Games are the greatest sporting event in the world.
100%.
Like, it's like which is why I'm so passionate about, like, I want other people to experience it the way I experience it. Like I'm 100% absolutely riveted. One of the most exciting events for me that I've ever watched was the marathon row. Like I sat in the stands for 3 hours, not blinking, just staring at those screens. Like I want everyone to experience that. And I get that that's not most people. Yeah. So I would love for people to, because I understand, when the pace goes from 2:11 to 2:14, I know what's going through their heads. And like, if we could bring that to light, like, man, that's cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's been years since people asked me like, "Oh, what sports do you listen to?" I just at this point just say I don't, because I don't want to explain to them that the only sport I actually pay any attention to is the CrossFit Games, because then I have to explain what that is. But yeah, no, it'd be great to be able to say that and be like, "Oh yeah, no, I watched that this year." That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a long one, but that was the first trend is that it's just going to get bigger, which I love. What's another one you're anticipating?
I think that because of the biggerness of this, the growth.
Yep.
If you put "ness" on the end of anything, it sounds awesome. Yeah. I think that we're going to see the professionalization of the sport.
Oh yeah.
I think right now, with the rare exception of a few people, I think that this is not being done at a professional level.
Yep.
And I put me, my operations, my athletes, my coaching in that bucket. I am not a professional CrossFit coach. I do it part-time.
Yeah.
Now, I know that there are athletes that dedicate their lives to this. I still don't think they're doing it at the very, very highest level. Now, there's probably a small handful of 5 or maybe, but the growth of the athletes, what other sport do you kind of fall into at age 22?
Yep.
Like, it just doesn't happen. I think that we're going to and people are like, well, that's because there's no future in the sport. There's such limited opportunities. There is today, without the growth, there's way, way, way more of a career in the sport of CrossFit than there is in 90% of Olympic sports.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, families uproot and move their entire family across the country to be next to certain coaches, training academies, facilities, whatever it might be, for the opportunity of potentially getting their kids into the Olympics. And there is no financial or reward from doing that. Mm-hmm. If you make the Olympic wrestling team, like there's no, like, you're not a professional wrestler. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not making a career out of that. And that's a pretty well-known sport. Never mind like luge, skeleton, like, I think that what we're going to see is families, because now it's becoming generational as well. Families are going to get their kids into this earlier with the hopes of like getting scholarships and earning potential and, changing their lives through the opportunities that CrossFit will provide for elite athletes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. I think that'll be fun. Okay, bigger, more professional, or what's the third one?
Professional. And the third one is, I just think we're going to see this is kind of maybe it's a cop-out answer, but I think it's worthwhile bringing to the surface of how good these athletes are getting. What was a winning score at the CrossFit Games in 2008 is seen in every CrossFit gym in the world now. Everyone's commonplace. People are doing it. The winning snatch for a female at the CrossFit Games in 2009 was 145 pounds.
Yep. And it was
we have teenagers doing that.
Yeah.
That aren't even CrossFit Games athletes. What is happening now? And if you look at what's happening, like what just happened at this past stage of the CrossFit Games and what these athletes are doing, Matt Fraser doing a 3:05 friendly Fran, like what? Like what?
Yeah.
Remember when a 3-minute Fran was like really cool?
Yep.
Like really cool. That puts you on the elite level. Like if you had a sub 3-minute Fran, you were a freak. Matt Fraser essentially just did that without the descending rep schemes, which is harder, with 115 pounds, not 95, and with chest to bar pull-ups, not regular pull-ups.
Mm-hmm.
That's insanity. I think that these athletes truly are becoming, what I see in trending is tougher, stronger, fitter, faster, younger. Like it's all like Justin Medeiros, 21 years old, like stud. Now we've had studs before. Ben Smith came on the scene really young. Yep. Sam Quant came on the scene really young. But the numbers, when those guys came on the scene versus the numbers that Justin Medeiros is doing, Haley Adams, what she's doing, like, yes, Katrin came on the scene really young, but like the leaps and bounds that are being made every 2 to 3 years. We tested heavy DT and double DT, which were both games workouts in 15 and 16. We tested them again this year. Katrin won double DT back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
When we tested it this year, she knocked 6. I'm going to get this right. She went from her winning time, I think, was low 9s, and she did it in high 5s this year. Essentially half the time. And that was a winning time. She was the fittest person in the world that year.
Yeah. Like
the capacities that are being put out now. This year, for the first time, we saw an athlete do a 500-pound back squat and a sub 5-minute mile in the same day and 50 pull-ups all in the same day.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing athletes left and right get sub 155 Fran times. Like it is what's happening now that we are 10, 11, 12, 15 years into CrossFit. What's going to, I mean, it's almost, scary is a word, but it's like exciting to see the superhumans that are being created and what this is going to look like in the next 5-10 years. Like it's going to be insane.
Before we wrap up, do you think that everything you just said, the bigger, the more professional, the better, obviously those are all intricately, related right? If they get better, it gets bigger, they get more professional. It's a nice virtuous cycle. But do you think, and this is an impossible question, obviously, but do you think that all of those things would have been as likely if CrossFit hadn't have been sold to somebody who at least out loud has said, I want the games to be a bigger part or a very big part of what we're doing here, versus a year ago what it was, which is we've got to get these games away from my gyms or whatnot?
No, the first one, the more coverage, the more attention would not have happened, I don't believe. Greg Glassman, as revolutionary as he was, you can say all the good things and all the bad things. He just wasn't that interested in the sport.
Yeah.
He didn't really like the CrossFit Games that much. He was more into curing chronic disease. So he didn't want to pour the resources into it, AKA fire the media team and let people, he didn't want any part of it.
Yep.
So I don't think the first one would have happened. The professionalization of it may have happened, but it would have been slower. And I'll just put the last bucket as the same thing. Is like the continued growth. It would have happened. It's just another year of training under these athletes' belts. It would have happened. I think it's going to be expedited because of the opportunities that are now in front of us. Because what's going to happen is little Johnny is a great athlete. Instead of getting little Johnny to go to US, try to become an Olympic weightlifter or become even like a collegiate rower, maybe now little Johnny wants to be a world champion CrossFitter because of the eyeballs, the attention, and all the rest.
Yep.
It's a bigger pool to pull from.
Agreed. All right, my friend. That was 3 lessons from stage 1 of the 2020 CrossFit Games, 3 benchmarks for competitive CrossFitters, and 3 trends you're anticipating inside the sport of CrossFit. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for listening, for sending us questions, for leaving ratings and reviews, and we will see you all next week on another episode of Chasing Excellence. You can get every episode of Chasing Excellence wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Until next time, thank you for listening.